Do you think your life would be any different if you were never exposed to substances?
They'd be very different. I think I'd probably be doing very different things right now. I don't really know. Maybe I'd be not even in the city still. I first used any substance 6 years ago when I was 12. I started off with weed, and then I didn't try any other substance until like 4 years after I started, which would be alcohol and some psychedelics.
Did that usage ever turn into an addiction or dependency, and if so, on what?
I had somewhat of a dependency on weed just because it was such a quick stress reliever, and it's just something that kind of became habitual for a while. Sometimes I wouldn't even be high that whole day, I would just be smoking.
And so if we have all sorts of these sort of intense anxieties, then I think people tend to want to feel a particular way. And so I think there's a stigma to these, oftentimes to these drugs, but also we don't want to get to the point where we're saying, well, then it's okay then for people to do these drugs. And the problem, I think, oftentimes then becomes that when we're no longer feeling the sensation of the drugs, then what happens is our body doesn't just rebound back to the way that we were feeling at the moment when we weren't taking the drugs. We start to feel the exact opposite form. And so in a drug like crack or cocaine, there's this huge stimulation, and then there's a crash, and the crash goes below that sense. And so then to get that high again, you have to take more, and you have to take more. And so I think that's what sort of causes a lot of addiction.
First time I used a substance, I was 14. I've experimented with a lot of stuff. I've experimented with marijuana and a couple of psychedelics, alcohol, and tobacco and stuff.
The first time I used a substance, I was actually 9, and a family member had left something out, and I was told it was green tea. And so, as a kid, I wasn't allowed to drink caffeine. I was gonna disobey mommy and drink caffeine. But it wasn't green tea. And, yeah. And I've experimented with a lot. The first time I actually started experimenting of my own free will, I was 13. I've tried tobacco, marijuana, some psychedelics, ecstasy, coke, stuff like that. I had my phase before I moved to the US.
Turned into an addiction. Well, my alcohol turned into addiction. I realized that was a problem this summer when I was in Europe, because all the Europeans just drink their weight. And I had a dependency on weed. I literally couldn't fall asleep without it. And I remember I tried doing a tea break in March or something, and the whole week I just could not sleep because I tried not smoking and it just didn't work out.
For me, I moved back to the US about a year ago, and before I moved here, I definitely had addiction issues, honestly. I wasn't even necessarily addicted to one single substance. It was more just the high itself and the act of partying. I remember having a very big dependence on weed as well. I couldn't eat or sleep without it. I'd smoke and then just want to smoke again and again. I wouldn't even be high for a whole day or two, just smoking and smoking.
I think if I was never exposed to substances, my life would be different because, one, I'd have a lot more money, and two, my mom, would actually trust me and not be worried, whenever I go out, oh, Giuliana's gonna do drugs, she's gonna, whatever she says in her head,
Yeah, I would definitely have a lot more money, but I also wouldn't have lost certain parts of myself. And that's only specific to certain experiences, but I was definitely not safe a lot of the time. I think it would just have been a lot more freeing overall. But I also know that certain aspects of my personality have been nurtured into a healthier version of what once was, and I learned and discovered a lot through my like reckless days, even just certain music and raver culture and people I've met. So there would be good and bad.